We are going to get started here with our go no go poll segment, which is going to be our name for our handy dandy very fancy space news segment. That's what we're going to be doing, chat. So yeah, let's see what trouble we can get into. So as you can see here on my left, your right, we're going to have our go and no go news. Basically everything that's under the go category is what yeah, very fancy, yes, pat on the back for me for sure, like whoo. We are going to be covering all of this news under go. That is basically the good news, things that are happening right in the industry. And then everything under no-go is going to be what I have found today to be kind of a miss, not so great, even bad news. And that's what we're going to run with. So first on the list here, chat, is going to be our handy dandy launch schedule. So as it stands right now for our upcoming launches, of course, we have Starlink mission after Starlink mission after Starlink mission after Starlink mission. They just keep going, chat. They're at like 6,800 satellites launched to date for Starlink. I think they have like 6,500 operational. Pretty great track record. Yeah, they're pushing it. Remember, Starlink's original goal was to get up to 8,000 satellites in its operational shells, and then extending that all the way out to like 20,000 satellites over their entire life period. Yeah, they're hitting that. No problem. Remember, SpaceX wants to launch like 120 missions this year, and they're kind of on track to do that. I think they fell behind a little bit in that summer lull that occurred like back in late May, early June. But regardless, even if they keep on the same track that they are now, they're going to hit like 110, which is just absolutely amazing. A rocket engine that will blow up on the stand. What about the rocket engine that will blow up on the stand? Hopefully none. But anyways, so that's what we have to look forward with here in the upcoming week. But also, chat, as we were saying just a second ago, we have another Worldview sat launch as well as an Arctic satellite broadband mission launch. Both of these are set to launch here next week. Both of them, surprise, surprise, on a Falcon 9 from SpaceX. But aside from all of the SpaceX launches that they are spoiling us with, we did get a little bit of an update on a possible, what I can only assume is the movement of the next Vulcan stage going to Cape Canaveral on rocket ship ahead of Debbie, the tropical storm / hurricane that's right off the coast right now. What's up, Panta? How are you? Yes, fellow nerd here. So we got a fantastic image here from Tori Bruno, the man, the myth, the legend, the CEO of ULA, who shows us this fantastic coverage of rocket ship. This is actually the name that ULA has named this boat for carrying all of the different rocket core stages. So rocket ship has in fact landed at Cape earlier today ahead of Debbie, the tropical storm / hurricane off the coast of Florida, and moving Vulcan core stage off the boat. V003 right there. Super nice. The space cowboy, exactly. Howdy, right? Howdy. So Thomas, for V003, is this going to be for flight 3, or is this actually for the second certification flight? Or is the second certification flight core stage already here at Cape Canaveral before this landed? We'll launch in a Vulcan Centaur 4. Interesting. Okay. This is for flight 3, not flight 2. Ah, okay. So flight 2 is already here then. Most excellent. Because remember, like I just showed a second ago on the on our handy dandy launch schedule, we do have our second Vulcan flight, our second basically flight number 2, our certification flight, that Vulcan kind of just put on the schedule after some demand from the United States Space Force and the United States Air Force, looking for additional flights, and then also because Dream Chaser got delayed and other things got delayed, so they were like, you know what, we're just going to fly another one for certification so we can then start ramping up our operations for basically targeting DoD satellite missions. That is now scheduled net no earlier than September 16th. So hopefully that sticks. I haven't heard anything otherwise for that not sticking, but yeah, Vulcan, ULA ramping up their production, ramping up into full-scale operations. All that stuff is definitely a go for launch, which is fantastic. By the way, did you know you can just buy a cowboy hard hat and a ULA sticker and cosplay Tori Bruno? That's fantastic, and that sounds like what I'm going to be for Halloween this year. Thank you for that, Panta. Fantastic. The one that was going to launch, Dream Chaser, was already at the Cape and was repurposed for certification flight 2. Gotcha. Is the front and rear of the semi-trailer connected, or are they two separate trailers? They should be two separate. Like, there's nothing here. Totally separate. I think they actually have a guy controlling it, right? Yeah, they usually have a guy on the back controlling it. Yep. It's basically like one of those transporters, those really, really long boy transporters that we see, kind of independently controlled. I'll dim you a link to the hat on Discord. Much appreciated. Fantastic. I was going to say that's a long trailer if it's one piece indeed. I need to be Jebediah Kerman for Halloween. Yes, that would be also a fantastic cosplay. Okay. So yeah, that kind of concludes our original launch updates. Like I said, we're moving core stage around. ULA rocket ship was there at Cape, delivering our Vulcan serial number 3, which is going to be used after our certification flight. But now let's move on to our next bit of news, which is all going to be about SpaceX, chat. Because of course, I'm sorry to say, but SpaceX is killing it. In a fantastic way. They're definitely doing good work in terms of their massive, very, very high launch cadence, their updates with Raptor 3, their updates at Starbase. We'll get into all of that. They're moving very, very fast. So the first little bit here is, we've already covered this a little bit here. But this is Raptor 3. Raptor 3, serial number 1. If you're not first, you're last, chat. This is the very first engine of the Raptor 3 variant that we have seen from the production line. This is not a render, let me add. This is the true system. And so this was coming from Elon here just a couple days ago. We actually saw this on the day that it came out. And we recently got some side-by-side pictures of basically Raptor 3 in comparison to Raptor 1 and Raptor 2. And this is what it looks like, chat. Look at the difference. Raptor 1 is a mess, as it should be. Most of these lines are like pressure transducers and different thermocouple connections and everything like that, purge lines, what have you. It's basically a bunch of engineering sensors, and this is a perfect example of just make it work first, and make sure we have enough sensors on it to understand what's good and what's bad. Then Raptor 2 entered a more streamlined production phase, and then Raptor 3, this doesn't have all of the connections to it. As you can see, there's still some red tags. They don't have all the connections, but very much streamlined. Like, this is production model. This is what we're going to go with for the foreseeable future. Absolutely amazing how streamlined everything has gotten. The engine looks so simple that it looks like it was made in Blender. I agree. It's amazing looking at Twitter feeds and seeing just how many people are like, oh, it's a render. Like, if you look at it, in this picture, especially with the lighting off of the matte finish for the engine, totally does look like a render, right? Like, you can see like a lighting effect here, but it's a matte finish paint job on the Raptor engine, and yeah, that's what it looks like. But then when you see it in comparison in a better lighting source next to the other engines, yeah, very, very clear improvements made in the actual real thing, which is actually very awesome. That's going to make some nice confetti when it pops on the vertical stand. Absolutely. I'm so excited to see this thing blow up, because that means you're learning, correct, chat? Old and busted, new hotness. Exactly right. What's up, Stuart? How are you? Sent you the DM on Discord. Much love to you. Thank you. Thank you. What's up, Brayson? How are you? But yeah, so this is all coming from SpaceX. We also have some performance metrics that SpaceX has given us. We have a thrust of 280 tons of force. So that's a lot. Specific impulse, 350 seconds. Remember, this is the sea level version. The vacuum version can get like 30 to 40 seconds better than that. Engine mass, 1.5 metric tons, which is actually fantastic. When it has all of the side vehicle commodities, all of the connections, the control box, what have you, it's around 1.7 metric tons, which is, like I said, absolutely, very much streamlined. So yeah, in terms of like what you can actually get for the, I guess, overall thrust to weight ratio of the engine itself, we're looking at like 160 thrust to weight ratio for just the engine. Now, of course, on something like Super Heavy and Starship, it still Super Heavy still requires like 40 engines, right? But in terms of just the engine, it is like a thrust to weight ratio of like 160, which is just, that's incredible. And the reason why SpaceX can do that is because this thing has an insanely high chamber pressure, like 300 bar. Like, it's absolutely disgusting how efficient they have gotten this and just how powerful they've been able to run this engine. Like, just whew, very, very, very compact for that pressure ratio. A first engine, especially with the power of that, will always give you issues. Well, yeah. But at the very least, what you can say is that it is designed off of an iterative development process. So you make something work and you learn from it. You streamline it, make something work, you learn from it, and then you move into production, right? Like, you can see a very clear, very methodical approach to rocket engine performance improvement. Just between the first and second and the second and third. It's very smart. Like, this is true iterative development. It's really cool to see SpaceX move at this pace, right? Because the closest sort of thing that we have to it is the BE4 engine, right? But the BE4 engine is arguably, I mean, it's a beautiful looking engine, don't get me wrong. But it's also very, I guess, quote unquote, ugly looking with all of the engineering connections and all the purge lines and all the pressure transducers that they've integrated. This is very much Raptor 1. Like, we haven't seen very much in terms of the overall rocket industry, the type of iterative development laid out side by side like that. Like, getting this style of image here, I love it. I think it's fantastic because you can truly see what it is to optimize performance over time, right? Do you have a Discord server? I do have a Discord server. I don't have... You know what? 1 second. Stand by. Stand by. I got you. I can do this, chat. I could do this. I trained my whole life. And I hope if this doesn't work, I'm going to be super sad. Copy link. Please tell me that this works. Please tell me that that link works. I hope that link works, Cosmo. So best of luck to you. If it doesn't work, then I'll have to do some other trickery here. But we'll get it done. Yeah, but even with Raptor 2, they have they are having a bunch of issues. Yeah, don't forget, we're still seeing improvements from even the Super Heavy Starship side, right? It says invalid. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So then that means I need to go. Thank you for that, by the way, Dragon. Really appreciate that. So I wish because I swear I've set that link to be like never expire, but apparently, right? Apparently, absolutely not. Now I need to go here, and I need to go to server settings. Stand by, chat. Quick one. Invites. Why can't Discord? Discord has like too many things. Has anybody else noticed that? Discord has like way too many things. I don't like it. Does this one work? No, that one is link invalid. Son of a gun! Why is Discord way too much? It also doesn't help that, there we go, invite, copy. Okay, so we're just gonna do this, and then we're gonna go to this, and then now that should work. I'm gonna have to update that command again. Anyways, okay, back to it, chat, back to it. What's up, RJ? How are you doing? How are you doing? We already know there are other blocks of BE4 planned so that the engine will likely slim down as well. Yep, of course. It was also the first time they ever attempted an engine with that amount of thrust. Exactly. Yeah, definitely that linked worked. Good. So that is absolutely true. But that was my point, right? Is that this is still very much Raptor 1. They're obviously going to iterate on it. This is Blue Origin's BE4, right? They've only flown it on an operational mission once. Like, this was coming from Vulcan. Vulcan's first test flight was BE4's first operational test. This is, of course, going to be going on New Glenn and all of these other vehicles. So fantastic. But yeah, very much this is Raptor 1. So we do not get a lot of insight for any company right now that has something like this, where we can see a very clear iterative development process, which is absolutely awesome. Yep, VC1, that's right. And it did work. It worked first time, no problem. But yeah, so going back to it, of course, we've seen SpaceX work a lot on the reliability of Raptors. You know, everything from integrated flight test 1, where they lost like how many Raptors? They lost like 4 on liftoff, and then none of them basically turned back on for super heavy, and yeah, massive problems during IFT4. Just the last IFT, they only lost like 2 engines, right? One shut down early right after liftoff, if I remember correctly, and then one literally did pop, exploded, shrapnel going everywhere on Super Heavy's engine ignition for landing burn. So yeah, but massive improvements overall from like the very first Raptor iteration to Raptor 2. And so now we have Raptor 3. It looks simpler, it's more streamlined. So hopefully the whole mentality is, chat, is if you have a simpler system, less things to go wrong. But time will of course tell. Time will of course tell. Where is New Glenn development wise? Well, I'll show you. So take this, of course, with a grain of salt, okay? But somewhere on this list of future flights for the launch schedule, we do have a New Glenn demo flight set for September 29th. Now, I don't think that's going to stick. I haven't heard much of any updates. Last we saw, they were doing pad fit checks with their, basically their test article, their structural test article, right? But supposedly they want a demo flight by the end of this year. So, you know, that's like the last update we got, which was like September. That's probably, of course, going to slip, but it's supposed to be this year. There are at least 3 more flights of BE4 planned for this year, with possibly 1 or 2 more. That'd be amazing. Yeah, get more time on the BE4 engine. I'm a very big fan of the BE4 engine. Isn't Vulcan going to launch VC2 later this year? VC2 is set to launch here September 16th, yeah. And then we're supposed to have VC3, right? We just saw Tori Bruno on our last part of the Go No Go poll news that Vulcan serial number 3 core stage has been delivered to Cape Canaveral. So yeah, they are looking to do at least 2 more flights this year. Certification here for flight number 2, September 16th, and then ideally a 3rd flight before the end of the year, depending on basically other systems launch readiness, of course. But anyways, chat, very much looking forward to this engine, of course, flying more. This is BE4 from Blue Origin. Very excited for that, but it's fantastic that we're getting more and more images from SpaceX for Raptor 3 in just the short amount of time that it's been sort of provided to the public. So this is, of course, Raptor 1. Oh, they were giving Raptor 1 and Raptor 2 performance metrics. And, oh, that's good. So 280 tons of force for Raptor 3. That's 100 tons of force more since Raptor 1. Absolutely crazy. And look how much they've been able to basically reduce mass. They were able to reduce mass by half a ton. That's absolutely crazy. And then by, of course, with all the hardware mass, because they're able to simplify everything, they've actually they've slimmed down the mass by almost 50%. By more than 50%. Absolutely crazy. Are you doing KSB today as well? That is the plan, Smoke. Yes. And then we have 230 tons for Raptor 2. Wow, that was a massive jump just between Raptor 1 and Raptor 2 for the thrust output. 1,600 kilograms all in total. Yeah, wow. Yeah, from Raptor 1 to Raptor 2, it definitely slimmed down. But even look at that. It's a full metric ton lighter Raptor 3 is in comparison to just Raptor 2. That's wild. Okay. That's absolutely wild. He shared improvements, did he? 6 this year. Wait, hold up. Ooh. Oh, from July 11th. Yes. Nice. I do remember seeing this. Yeah, this was Tori Bruto talking about the updates to the infrastructure at the Slick 41. Indeed. Yeah, like ULA is ramping up. They're doing good work. SpaceX, of course, is more in the spotlight right now because we've gotten update after update, launch after launch after launch. But yeah, pretty good. So another little bit of space news while we're on the SpaceX train. This came out just a couple days ago. We have some very, very amazing slow-mo footage of a vacuum optimized Raptor engine on the test stand, and boy is it looking good. I have got school tomorrow, so I gotta sleep soon. All right, Cosmo, much love to you. Have a good night, and best of the best at school tomorrow for sure. That's from April, but we just got the slow-mo vid. Oh, that's from April. You're right, that is from April. I was thinking that I just saw this on my feed a couple days ago, and so I was saving it for today. But you're right, this is from April. But anyways, I wanted to show this anyways, because it was on my feed for a couple days ago. Raptor engine on the test stand. I really like this video because it shows the shutdown staging for a rocket engine. So again, this is the vacuum optimized version. But just watch this super slow mode during shutdown. Absolutely, I love this footage. SpaceX has been so forthcoming, you know, in comparison to other companies on being able to show us some really cool stuff. So it's going to be, so this is during shutdown. So as you can see, the entire vehicle starting to ramp down. Basically, the turbines are starting to come off of their max RPMs and they're spooling down, which means that the propellants are getting fed into the rocket engine through the injector plate up here at a slower rate. Everything is happening. This is a very large transient dynamic regime that the vehicle is going to be going through. And as you can see, as the vehicle continues to ramp down, we start to get combustion instabilities. Now the vehicle is chugging. This is quite literally is called chugging, not chugging as, you know, we might hear as humans chug a drink or something. Chugging is a phenomenon that occurs, you really don't want it to occur at a steady rate. Chugging is this massive fluctuation that you're going to see here in a second of the byproducts of the engine basically ramping up and then throttling down, and then ramping up and then throttling down. Oh yeah, see, that's very bad for a rocket engine. And what's also amazing is that you can actually see the shock as it's shutting down move back into the nozzle and back into the combustion chamber. So you see this line right here? This is one shock that's occurring inside of the nozzle. You're getting flow separation on the inside of the nozzle. You can see a second one back here occurring. And right there, you can see it start to move back. It's going forward, backwards as these different shocks happen and carry out through the engine. Not great, Bob. But luckily, this is during shutdown process, and shutdown happens over the course of like half a second. So it's really not bad for the rocket. You just don't want this to happen during a sustained performance period, because during this time, because it's transient, you get a lot of stresses on the nozzle And this can happen, you know, this can actually be a reason why certain nozzles pop during different flight regimes. But yeah, so this chugging typically occurs when you're throttling down, because as the turbopumps start spooling down, they're feeding the combustion chamber with a less optimized ratio of liquid to oxygen, to where you're not getting combustion, you're actually getting delayed combustion. And so what happens, right, is that as you get delayed combustion, the combustion chamber pressure goes down, which means that the turbopumps are able to feed the combustion chamber with more propellant. Then that causes an explosion, right? And then that increases the combustion chamber, and now the pressure inside the combustion chamber is higher, so the turbopumps can't feed as much propellant, so then pressure drops, and then you get this cycle of high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure. Which then translates to more propellant being fed, less propellant being fed, more propellant being fed, less propellant being fed. And so that happens at a very, very short duration, but very slow oscillations, like, you know, 100 hertz or something like that, 100 times a second. But yeah, very, very cool to actually see this in slow-mo for a vacuum optimized nozzle, because then you can actually see the shocks move into the combustion chamber all the way from outside the nozzle, which is, it's just crazy. Speaking of Raptor vacs, Ship 30 had yet another RVAC swap. Let's hope it doesn't need yet another static fire. That's true. Interesting. Yeah, they do keep throwing those out. That's after we got the slow-mo video of the startup for that Starship, right? But yeah, really, really cool video. Like I said, this is apparently, thank you, Thomas, actually from April 10th, but it just got on my feed and I wanted to show it. So there we go. But anyways, moving right along, like I was saying, this is essentially what happens during this, what's known as chugging for a rocket engine. It's a big cyclical process where you have your chamber pressure, which might be increasing, which changes the injection pressure, which changes the time delay on ignition, which of course then changes the propellant flow rate, which changes the combustion delay time, which, you know, you just get this massive cycle. And as the chamber pressure decreases, it affects these things in a certain way, and then as it increases, it affects it in the opposite way. So you just get this big cyclical process that causes that big undulating effect on as the vehicle shuts down, which is yeah, not great to see if that's actually your like operating point, but during shutdown it's no problem. Yeah, it doesn't like it. It's fine. You know, it'll get used to them, right? You just got to get used to them. All right, moving right along, chat. SpaceX still on our forefront. If you guys have not seen it, Cygnus did in fact launch today after having like a, I don't know, a 40% probability of violation or something like that. Remember, right off the coast of Florida right now is a tropical storm / hurricane Debbie, which is set to make landfall here in the next couple of days. So weather has been deteriorating around Cape Canaveral, and this was supposed to launch this morning, and in fact it did around 9 a.m. Eastern. And we got some really amazing views, I must say. Like, also notice the short boy nozzle. This was also, is this the first flight from a short boy nozzle since the last Anomaly from the upper stage? But yeah, so this was kind of a, wasn't this kind of like a return to flight? I mean, I know they've done Starlink, but like a first return to flight for like, I guess, launching commercial payloads. Stubby nozzle, yeah. Stubby nozzle, very stubby. It was, yeah, okay. But yeah, anyways, I'm just gonna let this play forward. We got some great views of the landing because this was a return to launch site landing burn. So it came all the way back to the Cape. Look at that. Vehicle is moving sideways. If you guys remember us doing this in KSP where we could literally turn the rocket sideways and fly it in back to our landing zone, absolutely amazing. You can actually see it there for a second, just what angle of attack we have. And then it goes from a 1-engine ignition to a 3-engine ignition, back to a 1-engine ignition, all the way down to the ground. It was a good launch, chat. It was definitely a good launch. Yo, what's up, Wiz? How are you? It is a little bit weird looking, isn't it?
Landing confirmed.
A spectacular 335th.
Yeah. So that is what we were able to get to today. But like I said, if you can see this from like a zoomed out view, which I think NASA Spaceflight got a great shot of it, this is literally flying at like an angle like this. Like it's actually flying back towards the pad, and you can kind of see it based on the aerodynamics. Like look at this, the bottom grid fin is going through the transonic regime. It's basically having the vapor cone around it on the upper side here. So only on one side are we getting those vapor trails. So this vehicle is moving in sideways, literally flying back towards the pad. It was a great shot. And then you can see during startup here, we have the single engine burn during startup, moving into a 3-engine burn, back into a single engine for landing. I would love to see footage like this from New Glenn as it approaches this barge. Yeah, 100%, definitely. But the only unfortunate thing is I honestly have no idea what to expect from Blue Origin for its flights, mainly because they are so secretive. I don't know what to expect. Like, I would not be surprised if we got zero information, zero, you know, camera views from the barge, just because they, you know, their production value, they're very secretive on their performance. But we'll see. Hopefully, one can dream, right? But that was a great launch from SpaceX, working absolutely perfect all the way through delivery of Cygnus. So we can see here, this is coming from Julia Bergeron. She is a contributor for NASA Spaceflight. Look at that vapor cone, chat. Oh, it's so good. What a great shot of Falcon 9 as it goes through its basically its max Q. It's going supersonic at this point, which is why you have the massive vapor cone. And we actually got a lot of really, really good shots of Falcon 9 during this entire flight, because we got another one here from Ben Cooper. Ben Cooper, launch photo on X, got this amazing shot of 2 shocks off of the vehicle, and their vapor cone in the atmosphere is creating this rainbow effect, much like a rainbow is just having basically sunlight move through the clouds or any sort of rain droplets and water droplets in the atmosphere. We get that same sort of effect here through shock waves. I absolutely love this photo. And Bravo Alpha Echo coming in with that Twitch Prime subscription on Twitch for 27 Kerbal years of support. Much love to you. Thank you, Bravo. Very much appreciated. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. That's such a nice photo, isn't it? Yeah, so again, this is coming from Ben Cooper, if you want to see this on X yourself. But it's so good. Like, you can clearly see technically sort of 3 vapor cones coming off of the vehicle. You can clearly see one right there off of the engines. You can just start to see a very, very small one here off of the top of the landing legs. And then, of course, you can see another one coming off of the top of the booster here where the grid fins are. So multiple shocks coming off the vehicle, multiple vapor cones as it comes back in for a landing. Good shot. And we have some more here from him as well. There you go. So this is slightly different a little bit later in his flight. But seriously, so chat, what I was saying, look at the angle that this thing is flying. It's hard to see it in the other camera because that camera angle is offset. This camera angle is not. It is literally flying at like a 45-degree entry corridor for the landing zone, and it's even flying at a slight angle of attack as it tries to steer itself towards that landing zone, which is absolutely crazy. And again, you can see on this one a little bit better than the other one, the 3 different shocks, right? So you can clearly see one off of the engines. You can just make a small one off of the landing legs here. And then, of course, you can see the shock here at the very top of the booster. Also one stemming off of the grid fins. So yeah, Ben Cooper, in my opinion, one photo of the day for the launch from this, but definitely absolutely amazing. And then we, of course, have John Kraus. Absolutely phenomenal photographer as well. John Kraus is basically he's also now the content director of Polaris, of the Polaris Dawn program of Polaris. But he's also just a all-around good dude, spaceflight photographer. Here you can see an absolute killer shot of the vapor cone as it's forming. Like, this is the very beginning of it forming around the fairing of Falcon 9. This is earlier in the process than the one that we saw from Julia in a couple photographs ago. Just moving through the sound barrier right now. Absolutely amazing. And then we also got his view basically straight on from LZ, coming in for a landing. And then last but not least, the actual landing burn as well. So great shots today. Really, really good. I'm really glad it launched even with Debbie off the coast and not looking like it was going to be able to launch today. But we did. We got Cygnus up in the air. And we did, in fact, get a confirmed drop-off point of Cygnus deployed from the upper stage. So this is also from the live stream from SpaceX. This is the bottom of Cygnus here. And this is the payload attachment fitting. And you can see the folded up solar array from Cygnus. And there you go.
Deploy confirmed.
And there you have it, a successful spacecraft separation.
Yep, we'll get to that momentarily.
Is now on its way to the International Space Station, and as mentioned, is expected to arrive about 40 hours from now. And with successful separation, that's going to do it for me here in Hawthorne. Be sure to check spacex.com/launches for a
yeah, absolutely great launch. SpaceX operated perfectly. So here you can see on the payload attachment fitting, you can basically see this big C-clamp, which uses a frangible bolt connection. That's all basically triggered by this actuator here. The frangible bolt has a very, very small electrical impulse that then basically snaps the bolt that's holding it all into place. And then it's basically just a gigantic C-clamp going around the entire payload attachment fitting that's actually on the Cygnus capsule. So once that releases, it's all held in place by springs, or it's pushed out by springs held in by these clamps. And once they open, it also has a spring-loaded plate on the inside that just pushes it away. So yeah, everything worked very, very well throughout the flight for SpaceX. And then we will get into our no-go segment here momentarily, where we will cover the anomaly that occurred with the Cygnus spacecraft. Don't worry, it seems like it's fine. They are working the issue, and they have found some workarounds so far. But yeah, Cygnus is not having a good flight for this NG-21. But anyways, moving right along, chat, let's get into Starbase. We have this fantastic photo coming from John Kraus from Starbase as they're stacking the Super Heavy and Starship in a flight light configuration off of the tower on the orbital launch stand. Yeah, this was just from this afternoon. Absolutely great shot. They are working around the clock to get Starbase's second pad up and running, and they are making amazing progress. We can actually go ahead and start looking at said progress right here. This is, of course, coming from NASA spaceflight. They are moving so fast. So fast. That's not today. There are no vehicles on the launch site, but he posted this today. So when was this? Because he posted this at 3:16. I assumed it was from today. So when would this have been from? If they've already taken everything off. There are 0 vehicles at the launch site now. Interesting. I wonder if it shows a previous one. That's from 3 hours ago. From earlier. Oh yeah, Polaris program was doing some flights today. Pretty awesome. From August 3rd. Would this have just been from yesterday then? I don't see anything else from Starbase. Here's one from July 29th. So it was definitely stacked by July 29th. This was flight 4 stack? Oh, interesting. Well, anyways, he posted it today. Pretty great photo. But let's go ahead and look at the Starbase progress from a update from NASA Spaceflight here on YouTube. That was just outfitted here a day ago. So if you don't follow NASA Spaceflight on YouTube, highly recommend it. They are also another fantastic source of space news information, and they do daily coverages and updates on what's happening at Starbase and at SpaceX's McGregor facility and all that jazz. Lots of different basically permanently live views of Starbase and McGregor. But like I was saying, this is the second pad at Starbase. You can see they're moving very quickly. Already have the first four tiers of the launch tower up and integrated at Starbase. Here's the actual basically launch pad 1, if you will, the one that we've seen IFT 1 through 4 launch. But yeah, definitely have quite the updates to go through. Starship 30 and B-12 haven't ever been stacked together. Yep, got it. I'm from Boston, and there's an old Boston song riffing on the MBTA. I'm beginning to wonder if Charlie on the MTA should be redone for Starliner. Maybe. SpaceX is a week behind on stacking the tower per the schedule given to the FAA. The crane was lower today, and they're going to be extending it for the final 3 segments to be stacked. Gotcha. That is a massive crane, though. Absolutely massive. But regardless, they are moving very fast there at the pad. So are they delayed in stacking the tower, or are they delayed in preparing the launch site for basically launch pad 2? Because it seemed like once they got going, like, you know, clearing the field and then grading the field and everything like that, they got launch pad 2's foundation up very fast, and then they've been at a pretty good pace all the way through from what I've seen. But did they start late, or has this tower stacking just been a little bit longer than they were planning? That's a massive crane, though. So yeah, a lot of the development work right now at the pad has been all about getting this next facility up and running at Starbase. They gave a schedule to the FAA for the height of the crane and said this configuration would end on the 27th. Gotcha. Of last month. Ah, interesting. Okay. So you can see there, those are the hold down points for, that said for booster, right? Yeah, booster forward section. So there's the actual hold down points and where the grid fins stick out. Basically the inner stage, if you will, or the very top part. It's actually not the inner stage, but or like the hot staging ring. But it's that forward dome section. It's looking very nice. Mine? There you can see the cargo bay. All right, we don't need to hear that. We don't need to hear those rats with wings chat. This music's a little intense for watching Starbase updates. Goodness. All of the welding chat. Work on the orbital launch mount refurbishment continues for Flight 5. Oh, so this is the orbital launch mount that IFT4 handled. Looking like they're doing some repairs, welding seams. Module 5 lifted. So this is the new tower that they're lifting. So how many overall segments is it? Do we know, Thomas? How much is the other one? God, that tower is so flippin' tall. It even looks like the tower got a slight upgrade in its design as well, in comparison to the other one that's next door. 6 full and 3 halves. Gotcha. I thought, yeah, I was thinking it was 7. God, what a monster. But yeah, they have been making super good headway on this since they got started. Yep, removing the tanks out. This again is on site number 1. Back to site 2. So they got 2 modules stacked in a matter of a day. Is that what's the NASA space flights? This is from August 2nd. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, it'll feed both pads. That's right. Yeah, because there's a massive tank farm kind of like in front of near the road of basically the orbital launch pad 1 and tower 1. And that's designed to what they're going to, at least what they're saying is it's going to actually feed both tower 2 and orbital launch pad 2 as well as tower 1 and orbital launch pad 2. So 1 tank farm to rule them all, chat. That is the goal. Lots of money helps it go faster. That is true, Naps. That is true. Just need more bodies working on the nuts and bolts, right? It is a good looking ship. I can't wait to see even like future renditions, because remember they're stretching the overall design of Starship. Starship is going to get stretched. It's going to have its payload doors. They're going to have upgrades to it based off of our IFT4, because you know we saw burn through on the heat shields and tiles and everything. A lot of upgrades are going through this. We might not see them on ship 30, or at least all of them on ship 30, but it'll be interesting to see kind of like how Raptor 1, Raptor 2, and Raptor 3 went, as if in the future we can get like, you know, serial number say like 12 or whatever, and then, you know, ship the last ship that flew, and then like even if like the first production ship would be really crazy. S-32 in the background, never to fly. So sad. Yep, constantly moving equipment back and forth for production and facilities. What's that say? Weight 3,890 pounds. Solid. Like almost 2 tons. Like 1.6 metric tons. Nice. Yep, they're going strong. Do we have a remind me, Thomas, or anyone in chat, what was the what's the current date, if you will, for Starship to actually be able to launch? Starship 5, Integrated Flight Test 5. Like, I know we're waiting on the FAA, but so is it supposed to be end of September? By the end of September, ideally, is IFT 5? Art says 6-point lift only is lifted by only 3 points. I didn't catch that, Portable. Nice. Don't tell OSHA, it's fine. End of the month, early next, yeah. So ideally, definitely by the end of September, we should have IFT 5. The chopsticks are back. Upgrades are ongoing for the first catch attempt. Crazy. Oh. Well, isn't that majestic, chat? Is the entire end of this flight just the Hawk? That's awesome. SpaceX doesn't care about OSHA. Their safety on the site is bad. Yeah, so it seems. If it's any indication. Load spreader hooked to module 6. Let me see, what does that look like? Ah, yeah. Interesting. getting ready for the next stack. But that's it. So like I said, moving very, very, very fast at the launch site. To be fair, they don't care about other regulations too. And also, to be fair, aren't they still contracting out workers, or is this all SpaceX workers? Like, are they still contracting out the workforce, or is like all of these SpaceX technicians now technically? Yeah, 6 is already stacked. It's like 6th module. We now have 3 half stacks to go. Yeah, they're moving insanely fast. Insanely fast. But that's it, chat. Pretty good stuff overall. But like I said, we now have to go through the no-go segment here. First up is, of course, the Cygnus Anomaly, chat. You guys have not seen it. Cygnus. Not looking great, chat. Not looking great. So after the successful launch and delivery to its parking orbit from SpaceX on Falcon 9 this morning, Cygnus failed 2 engine burns for orbital insertion. Well, basically for orbital maneuvering. It was already inserted into its parking orbit, but it failed TB1, which was scheduled at 1544, just after stage 2 separation, and then also a second attempt at 1634 was actually aborted due to a pressure sensor in the orbital maneuvering engine. We did get a update from NASA, although they have kind of been not really as forthcoming as NASA. Like, it seems, I don't know what it is, but NASA seems to be like falling off on their PR. Like, I don't know if somebody like retired or whatnot. That's typically like on, you know, par, like really on the schedule for public relations. But it seems like ever since Starliner, the whole PR team for NASA has been like, I don't know what's happening. But anyways, we did get an update finally after several hours after the event, but it doesn't give much information. But it does say Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft completed the deployment of its 2 solar arrays at 2:21 Eastern after launching at 11:02 a.m. on August 4th. That was this morning. On a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX Launch Complex 40 or Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Shortly after launch, the spacecraft missed its first burn, slated for 11:44 a.m. due to a late entry to burn sequencing. Basically, it had a timing issue. Known as Targeted Altitude Burn, or TB1, it was rescheduled for 12:34, basically an hour later. But aborted that maneuver shortly after the engine ignited due to slightly low initial pressure state. There is no indication the engine itself has any problem at this time. Cygnus is at a safe altitude, and Northrop Grumman engineers are working a new burn and trajectory plan. The team aims to achieve the spacecraft's original target time on station at 3:10 a.m. on Tuesday, August 10th. That is also Eastern time. So they're still hoping to be able to arrive at the ISS by the initial target period, but it has definitely kind of been anomalous to date. But yeah, that's kind of the update that we got. Cygnus was successfully deployed off of the upper stage on Falcon 9, and then it basically missed its initial burn due to a timing error, and then it missed its second burn due to some kind of pressure anomaly, which is interesting. NASA is going to claim it's a proprietary information, which they cannot share. Yeah. Yes, indeed. My mom always said, if I have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. Yeah, but that doesn't apply here. Stop. So yeah, very much a no-go on this NG-21. Yeah, the 21st mission, Northrop Grumman mission number 21 for Cygnus. But anyways, chat, let's move on to some slightly hopeful news. You know, NG-21 Cygnus seems to be okay. It's at least in a stable orbit for now. Let's go into some, ideally some hopeful news here, chat, and that is Viper. If you guys don't know, Viper, which was the long-awaited for rover mission to the southern pole of the moon to search for water and other volatiles before basically humans got there. You know, it's like a great scouting mission for future Artemis missions. But anyways, it was canceled. Yeah, it got schnockered by the NASA machine on all of its funding. It's basically like mostly developed. It has a launch date already. It's supposed to launch with Astrobotics on their larger lander, and it got axed. But what might be some good news is NASA is looking for commercial entities to take over the project. And one such team that is looking to potentially take it over is actually Intuitive Machines, believe it or not, which is awesome. But anyways, so this coming here from CNN, this was actually linked by a very prominent member on X who has done a lot with like different Mars environmental development missions as well as lunar development missions. Cannot remember his name off the top of my head right now. But yeah, so looking to save NASA's $500 million water hunting moon rover is the caption. So let's see, a $500 million rover that would be crucial to US lunar ambition sits fully assembled but in a state of limbo, mere steps away from being ready for launch. Known as the Volatile's Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, or VIPER, the 948-pound or 930-kilogram vehicle is designed to scour the moon's south pole to locate water ice, a key resource that, if found, could one day be converted to drinking water for astronauts or even rocket fuel. But VIPER may not make it off the surface of Earth, citing budgetary concerns. NASA announced last month it was canceling plans to put VIPER on the moon, even though the agency has spent years developing the rover and still committed to pay for its ride to space. The move sent shockwaves through the science community. Commercial space companies scrambled to submit proposals to NASA suggesting ways the project could be saved. A petition with more than 4,500 signatures is circulating in Congress asking that VIPER be revived, and some lawmakers are expressing concerns or publicly called for a reversal. There's just a general sense of concern over this decision. It doesn't quite make sense, said Jack Curley, director of government relations at the non-profit Planetary Society, which led the petition urging Congress to act for them to cancel it at this point. I think it's turning a lot of heads on the Hill and in the space community writ large. Though not the only NASA-led project designed to hunt for water on the moon before astronauts arrived, VIPER was perhaps one of the agency's best shots. While other projects involve satellites remotely gathering data or a stagnant drill, VIPER is designed to roam the lunar surface, collecting data about specific resources and digging into the soil where appropriate. At this point, the project's future could unfold in at least 3 ways. Lawmakers could step in and direct NASA to change course. VIPER, in which NASA has already invested $450 million, could be stripped and sold for parts. Or a commercial company could snap up the rover and commit some money to save the groundbreaking vehicle. So a corporate savior is being looked for, yes? At the same time NASA announced its abrupt plans to end the VIPER program, it also turned to its international partners and the US commercial space industry for help, a common theme at the space agency. NASA asked companies to submit a expressions of interest, or basically a request for information, by August 1. So that was 4 days ago. And at least a dozen have reached out, according to the Planetary Society, which is keeping track. Among those companies is Intuitive Machines, the Houston-based firm that made headlines this year by successfully landing its Nova-C spacecraft on the lunar surface, albeit it did tip over, forcing significant disruptions to the historic mission, but it became the first US-made spacecraft to touch down safely on the moon in 5 decades. The company has worked to prepare for the second Nova-C mission slated for later this year, and the availability of the VIPER spacecraft piqued the company's interest for future projects. The VIPER rover is essentially complete, Tim Crane, co-founder and chief technology officer at Intuitive Machines, told CNN, and it has a small amount of testing to go. Under Intuitive Machines' proposal, it would use a new scaled-up version of its Nova-C lander called Nova-D to take VIPER to the moon's surface as soon as late 2026 or mid-2027. To reach that goal, Intuitive Machines will likely have to dip into its own funds, of course. NASA and its commercial partners have already estimated that the rover needs around $100 million of additional investment mostly from testing and ground support systems, but it's ready to head moon forward. And Crane said from Intuitive Machines that that's a good top-end number. It's kind of like buying a home with some renovations underway. We're going to evaluate those things and decide which ones that we're still going to do. We have to manage costs. Yeah, $100 million in testing. That's a crazy price tag, chat. Like, just for like testing and ground support equipment is, 20% of your budget. That's wild. I mean, I'm not saying that that's like unheard of. I'm just saying like $100 million price tag for testing, and when it's already built and you just need that to then send it. Yeah, crazy. Like, arguably, you could just send it as is without testing it, so long as it meets the other like launch criteria and things like that. Like, because when a spacecraft goes into basically space qualification testing, you do everything from TVAC, thermal vacuum chamber testing. You basically have to make sure you bake it out so that way no volatiles are emitted from the spacecraft from all the materials that are being used, like plastics and whatnot. You have to, of course, do EMI, EMC testing, or electromagnetic interference and compatibility testing, to make sure that communications are going to do weird things with the electronics on board and vice versa. There's a lot of testing that goes into it, shock and vibe. But there are certain things that you possibly could just cut or not do so strenuously to, cut the price tag and whatnot. But yeah, $100 million is what NASA says that they still needed in order to basically get it ready for flight, even though it's like completely already built. Let's see. Where was that? Okay, so but Viper is a heavily science-focused spacecraft, so what does a profit-seeking company stand to gain from it? Crane said Viper can gather crucial data that Intuitive Machines and other companies are seeking. John Marshall, the company's communication lead, likened the search for resources on the moon's surface to the California gold rush. It's an apt analogy. They definitely want to find water, because if you can find water, like they said earlier, that'll be future resources for astronauts for water, for creating certain byproducts for propellants for combustion, or you can actually just use water as your combustion system as well. Why? Because you can use electrolysis to basically separate that water into hydrogen and oxygen. So yeah, pretty great stuff. Viper can also send back information about soil composition and other things that are needed for future missions. Yes, indeed. Of course, it's not clear whether Intuitive Machines will have the opportunity to take over the Viper program. CNN was not able to confirm which other companies or international partners expressed interest to NASA or what those proposals might entail. The uncertainty around Viper's future has also created a troublesome few weeks for the company that had originally been slated to fly the rover to the moon. That is, of course, the Astrobotics company, Astrobotic Technology. Astrobotic made international headlines in January when it reached its first attempt to put a lander on the moon, though its Peregrine spacecraft ultimately abandoned those plans because of a propellant leak. As a result of the hangups, Astrobotics encountered the failure. Oh, well, thank you very much. I got some dinner chat. Thank you. From Rocket Gal. So as a result of the hangups Astrobotic encountered and the failure of its inaugural flight, NASA and Astrobotics decided the company should carry out additional propulsion testing on the Griffin lander, the lander that was slated for Viper. Wow. Indeed. Additional testing, however, pushed Griffin's expected launch date, the Viper's ride to the moon, into late 2025, 2 years later than initially intended. Yeah, dude, that, oh God, I did not think about that. That's such a bad idea. So when you have a system that's basically ready for flight, but then your launch gets delayed 2 years, you still incur all of those costs for operations for the amount of time, right? Because then you have to store it, you have to do checks on it, you have to cycle the batteries. It's not just like, oh, it's too late, it's 2 years delayed, we'll just have no more costs associated with it for those 2 years. No, that's not how that works. So yeah, that's pretty bad. Yeah, the Griffin lander, because Astrobotics had problems on their first mission with their propulsion system, they have to carry out additional testing. So their next mission, which was to carry Viper, got delayed by 2 years. Wow, it's crazy how things are all, integrated together, and how like one small thing, well, arguably one small thing, one component sort of thing failing completely can cause a slip of 2 years for subsequent flights, and then an entire $500 million program to get canceled. Yeah, marry that one. Oh wait, indeed. So the company is scrambling to evaluate science instruments and payloads that could replace the Viper on the astrobotics mission. There's a lot of interest. So anyways, chat, I will go ahead and post this if you guys want to read the rest of it. We got through most of the article. But the good news is, if there's any hope to be had, is that Viper could be saved. NASA is looking for commercial entities and other international organizations to pick up the bill. The Viper lander is like actually completely built and ready to go. It just has to go through its qualification testing, which is no small feat, right? As we were talking about earlier, there's numerous testings that you have to do. It could take a very long time to do those testings as well, like over a year, depending on how strenuous and how fast you can move. Like, testing is no small order. So the vehicle is built, but it still has quite a ways to go in order to actually become flight ready. But there are, of course, things that any commercial company can do to try and curb some of those costs and curb that timeline. But yeah, a lot, of course, in the pipe and nothing for sure. I remember the Galileo antenna fiasco. Yeah, indeed. Might these cascading effects be why people outside NASA don't follow the rationale to budget cuts? I'd guess insiders have a better sense of what will likely go over budget. Yeah, oh, 100%, Nick. 100%. Like, it's truly interesting, all of the repercussions. I think the best example of repercussions within the spaceflight architecture machine, if you will, is the decision to cancel Constellation. Now, hear me out, because we talked about this a lot, and I know this is kind of like my go-to example for a lot of the problems with the whole Artemis program. But Constellation was canceled because it was deemed to be too expensive for the budgets that NASA was getting at the time. So they canceled that, but they kept Orion in development. And then when SLS came around, because Orion was basically kept in development and was already basically a prototype, Orion was a drag and drop placement into the Artemis architecture. Well, what basically was the asteroid redirect mission, which gave us SLS, and then into what is now Artemis, right? So keeping Orion, that was originally designed for Ares 5, a much larger lifter than even SLS, which was supposed to also be strapped to the Altair lunar lander. Altair was that massive lunar lander that Lockheed Martin was basically heading up as part of the Constellation program. Altair was sized to be the main propulsion element for low lunar orbit insertion of Orion and the lander, a fully integrated architecture. Altair was scrapped. We still got Orion. SLS is smaller. Orion is too big for SLS to get into a low lunar orbit. That's why we got Gateway. Like, seriously, when one small thing happens, arguably Constellation's cancellation was not a small thing, but the small decision of keeping Orion and having a smaller lifter has completely shifted the entire future spaceflight policy, and, you know, is causing all these basically unrelated problems also are happening, like the HLS selection leading into something that Gateway can't manage, into Gateway being thrust off of SLS onto Falcon 9, and then that being overweight. Like, just absolutely wild, you know? Absolutely crazy. Ares 1? No, for lunar, Ares 5. Ares 1 was the single stick rocket. Cascading failures, you mean? Yes, Dead. 100%. Cascading failures. I have an article written about cascading failures, and yeah, it's bad, okay? Yeah, nothing, yeah, it's almost like things are all interconnected, and one small decision point has a cascading effect, right? Anyways, that just about does it for this bit of our first Go No Go poll space news segment. The last thing I will leave you with here, chat, is this: our cursed rocket photo of today. Oh yeah, so this is this is coming from Tim and Enon on X. This was from a couple days ago. It is a morph between the from a like what looks to be like a Boeing 747 or something and Starliner. Yep. First rocket of the day. That's what we're going to end on as part of our no-go news. Curiosity might be another good example of where a tiny requirement had a huge budget impact. They couldn't get the titanium dry lube motors to work, and it delayed the project years, indeed. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like this only because it reminds me of the space shuttle, but also I hate it because what is this? It's a Boeing 747 Starship. It almost looks like the right nose and shape and everything. Just, ugh. Starting from here and now, what would be a saner Artemis program? Saner? I mean, I think, honestly, the biggest change that needs to happen is with the NASA mentality. Not necessarily the mentality, maybe, but, like, its organizational structure. As I was saying earlier, Captain Failure, it very much seems like NASA is a whole bunch of different small businesses all competing within the same space. Like, all the different science centers and all of the different engineering centers, right, are basically competing for the same money. And when money is tight, you just get all of these, you know, competing entities, all of these different departments, even within the same research centers and engineering centers, all fighting for the same amount of money. So things get scrapped like instantly. As soon as you get a champion for one department, something else gets scrapped. And we keep seeing that over and over and over and over again. So I was saying, I honestly think that one of the quickest things to that needs to change is NASA needs to be run more like a small business, or like more like a business in general, where everything needs to be unified. We have to have a unifying vision. Like, that's what the whole Space Mission Directorate, the SMD, is supposed to be. But it just doesn't seem to actually be unifying all the centers and all of NASA like it should be. I think commercialization needs to start, not phase out commercialization. Commercialization is great. But we can't keep looking to commercial entities to like solve all of our problems, because then, as we see with NASA Gateway and Falcon 9 SpaceX, that just creates more problems. Like, if we're going to do that, we need to scrap the architecture and have a unified architecture that's built around commercialized entities. You see what I mean? Because basically NASA had this big idea for Artemis, which was, you know, SLS. It was going to have Gateway. It was supposed to have Orion. We were supposed to have an in-house integrated lunar architecture, but then that got commercialized, and now we have Starship. But now Starship being a completely separate system, it's no longer an integrated architecture. It's not an integrated architecture. Artemis is not an integrated architecture. Like, when you have SpaceX being the HOS, a completely independently developed commercial entity that's now supposed to work with all of these other things as an independent system. As we see with Gateway, Starship is too big for its station keeping. Like, it's just those sorts of things. Like, there's no unifying vision, and we're trying to fit like square pegs through a round hole, and it's just not working. It's just not working at all. No overriding vision. Yeah, no overriding vision, and still trying to fit too many things together. Like, we had a plan, right? The plan was Constellation. Okay, we don't get Constellation. Well, let's keep certain things from Constellation. Oh, well, one of the most important pieces from Constellation, the lunar lander, let's shell it out to some commercial entity without giving NASA, without basically giving any sort of definitive design, right? Because under Apollo, that is an integrated architecture. NASA designed the entire system and then basically pulled in commercial entities to then develop it. Like, that's what it should have been. But no, instead we got NASA just saying, hey, here's the requirements, which are, you know, vague enough that something like HLS Starship can fit into, and then we select that. Like, just unbelievable. I'm sorry that, you know, maybe a little spicy there, but yeah, a little too much. But that's my rant. I'll say it like that. That's my rant. And commercial entities will eventually prioritize profits over people. I personally wouldn't go that far, But I will agree that commercial entities are, of course, they have different goals and different rules than what a government organization has, right? Like, I don't understand why all these people say, like, oh, you know, just cancel SLS, Starship will be here, you know, in a matter of, well, I have no idea, a matter of years, which is already going to be too late for Artemis's current timeline. You know, everyone says, you know, cancel SLS. For Starship. Well, you know, like, what if, God forbid, SpaceX goes bankrupt, right? Like, something horrible happens, which can be, and they go bankrupt. Okay, so where is NASA now? Like, you can't do that. Like, I don't care how, like, great the company appears to be. Commercial enterprises are under a whole different rule set than any sort of government agency. So you just can't do that. What's up, what's up? How are you doing? All right, chat. What do you guys say we kick things off and get into some Kerbal